your dice rolling app isn't very useful without a way to roll the dice and see what you've rolled. To start, you're going to add a button that says Roll to the layout, and then some text which shows the dice value that you've currently rolled. So first things first, we're going to want to modify the layout to add the text view and the button. So to start, open up your project pane and open the activity_main layout file. And again, that's going to be in res layout. To make this easier to follow, I'm going to go ahead and delete the default XML code that is here and paste some code that I have for you in the instructor notes. This first tag here, the linear layout, is a special type of view known as a view group. View groups are responsible for holding multiple views on screen and helping to specify their positions. I'm using the linear layout view group here because it's a bit simpler to understand than the default constraint layout view group that you had before. You're going to learn a lot more about view groups and constraint layout in the next lesson. The linear layout view group is special because it positions the views one after another. This can be done horizontally, as in a row of views, or it can be done vertically, as in a stack of views. Horizontal is the default. In this case, you're going to want that text view vertically stacked on top of a button, so I'm going to change the orientation now. I'll go ahead and change it to vertical. You'll notice that all the views have a layout width and a layout height, which is their width and height. For this linear layout here, we see that the width has been set to match parent, which means that its width is the same as its parents. The parent of this linear layout is the root view, which is the size of the entire screen. So basically, this is saying that its width should be the size of the screen. Height is set to wrap content. This makes the height of the linear layout match the height of its content, which for now is only the text view here. So then the text view also has a width and a height. In this case, both are set to wrap content. And what is the content of a text view, you might ask? Well, that is the text here, which is Hello World. So the size of this text view right here is going to be exactly the box that is needed to wrap around the text Hello World. If you go over to this design pane here, you can see what this looks like. This text is pretty small. To make it easier to see the number, I'm going to change the text size to 30 SP. SP stands for Scale Independent Pixels, and it's a measurement for sizing text independently of the device's display quality. And again, I know that's a lot of words, but you're going to learn the specifics later, and in essence, it means that your text size will appear basically the same across a ton of devices. If I go over to the Design tab, I can now see that the text is quite a bit bigger. Okay, and now I'm going to actually change this default text here to say 1, because that's what an actual dice roll might be. So we've got this text view, but we're going to need that button so that we can actually roll the dice, so let's go ahead and add that button. And I'm going to add it below the text view tag, which means that it will actually be positioned visually below the text view. And I'm also going to make its width and height wrap content. Let's see what that looks like. Let's go over to Design. And I see that the button has been laid out below the text view. Because I set the width and the height to wrap content, that means it's going to wrap around whatever the contents of the button is. Speaking of which, I am going to make the contents of the text say roll. Now if you go back here, we see 1 and roll, and we also see that everything is kind of being pushed to the upper left-hand corner. But we actually want everything to be centered horizontally and vertically here. So going back to the XML, I'm going to set the layout gravity of both of these to be center horizontal. And then we can see that they are centered horizontally. Now we actually want to get this vertically centered as well. So to do that, I'm actually going to move the entire linear layout to the center of the screen here. And I'll do that by adding the layout gravity property again, but put vertical center. And now I can see that the views are basically where I want them to be. Last, but not least, it's good practice to move all of the user-facing strings inside of a resource file called strings.xml. This allows us to define strings in one location and easily change them in the future anywhere they're used. Centralizing your strings also makes it easier to translate your app to different languages and dialects, which you'll explore later in the course. To actually move your string, go ahead and place your cursor over the text of this button. When you do this, you'll see a little light bulb appear over here. That light bulb appears whenever Android Studio sees a way that it thinks it can correct or optimize your code. Now if I click on this light bulb, I see that the first option here is to extract the string resource. So that sounds good. I'm going to click on it, and I get this dialog here. I'll keep the resource name as roll, and the value, which is the text that will actually appear on the screen, I'm going to keep as capital roll. And so this is looking pretty good, so I'll click OK. And now if I go over here to the project pane and I go into the values folder, I see this strings.xml file, and there is my roll string. Okay, so that's it. Let's run our app. And as expected, you can see the text and the button, nicely placed with one above the other. Now, when I click the button, not much is happening. So that's what you're going to work on next.